Have you ever observed a certain Pokemon and have pondered what it even was? Or what it might be based on? Well, we've all been in these situations before, so I've decided to dedicate minutes upon minutes of study to some of these Pokemon and their real-life counterparts, especially the ones which are heavily influenced by folklore and culture. Welcome to PokeLink. Salutations, everyone. So, one thing I've noticed when coming up with ideas for this series is that there are plenty of Pokemon which do have a rich history, even some which you might not expect. Not you, Love Disc. Just no, man, just get out of here. Get out of here. Go, shoo. Where was I? Oh yeah. Hell, even the Pokemon which I suspected had a decent history exceeded my expectations immensely. And this is definitely the case for today's Pokemon. And I know, the past two episodes featured 4th generation Pokemon, but today will be our first 3rd generation Pokemon. And this Pokemon being Whiscash. And to a smaller note, it's pre-evolution Barboach, which I can basically sum up in a couple of sentences. So, first off, Barboach and Whiscash are obviously fish, one being a gray poundloach and the other a blue catfish. And at first sight, these Pokemon don't seem to be beyond what they are, but they are more than meets the eye. Well, at least for Whiscash. As I mentioned earlier, Barboach and Whiscash were both introduced in the 3rd generation games of Ruby and Sapphire. Both Pokemon share the same typing of water and ground respectively, and I'm gonna go ahead and go into Barboach's detailed appearance. Maybe not detailed, just slightly. So Barboach is a small Pokemon with a height of only about 0.4 meters, or 1'4". From its appearance, it's quite slender, resembles a loach. That's basically it. Its body is gray, it has a few details. There we go. I don't really care too much about Barboach, it looks like toothpaste to me. Alright, now let's look at Whiscash's design. Whiscash is a dark blue catfish with a yellow underbelly. It has a large light blue mouth with thin whiskers protruding from its bottom. It also has a long, thin barbel on its cheek. A yellow symbol graces the forehead of this creature, kinda resembling a W, and aside from this, Whiscash sports a light blue dorsal fin on its top, with spots. It also has a tail fin of the same color, though the fin doesn't have any spots whatsoever. Moreover, it is surprisingly small at the height of only 0.9 meters, or 2'11". And to be honest, before researching this Pokemon, I would have imagined it to be a bit larger. Now that was the basic description of the two Pokemon, and I think I pointed out the more important features. Otherwise, let's delve right into a few Pokedex entries for Whiscash. First off, before I start reading, most of Whiscash's Pokedex entries revolve around it being territorial, as well as it being able to predict and create earthquakes. For instance, in Ruby and Sapphire, it states, Whiscash is extremely territorial. Just one of these Pokemon will claim a large pond as its exclusive territory. If a foe approaches it, it thrashes about and triggers a massive earthquake. For Sapphire, if Whiscash goes on a wild rampage, it sets off a quake-like tremor with a radius of over 3 miles. This Pokemon has the ability to predict real earthquakes. For Fire Red Leaf Green, it makes its nest at the bottom of swamps. It will eat anything. If it is alive, Whiscash will eat it. The last entry I'll use is from Pearl, and it states, as a result of causing tremors by thrashing about, it developed the ability to foretell real earthquakes. Those were a few Pokedex entries for our blue catfish, and they are significant to what it is actually based on. Now, for this episode, I will delve into deep detail when attempting to summarize its main influences and the history of how it became prominent in Japanese folklore, history, and even in politics of the time. First off though, let's go straight into Whiscash's Japanese name. In Japanese, Whiscash is known as Namazu-e, and to be honest, this is straightforward to what it is. Namazu in Japanese literally means catfish. But now we ask the question, why is a catfish linked to initiating major tremors and being able to predict real-life earthquakes? This is where we take a look at the history of the catfish as a fish and as a yokai throughout Japanese history. And this will take some time to explain since the history goes far back. So, let's get started. To begin this, I'll go ahead and explain how the catfish is perceived by the Japanese throughout its history, and how they were portrayed. The name Namazu can generally refer to the real catfish which inhabit the lakes and rivers, or it can also refer to the mythical yokai Namazu, which is basically just a catfish, generally large in size or personified with human-like features. Though, during the 18th to 19th centuries respectively, the Namazu had become a prominent figure, one perceived as a mythical creature, as well as an artistic, literary, religious, and even a political symbol. Many inhabitants of the 18th and 19th century Japan, especially city dwellers, associated Namazu with earthquakes. But how did this even come about? Let's look at the early history of Namazu in Japan. From the sources I found, it all started around the Kamakura and Muromachi periods. Kamakura ranged from around 1185 AD to 1333 AD, and the Muromachi period from about 1336 AD to 1573 AD, respectively. During this time, Namazu-related myths came to light throughout Japan, but without any actual sense or uniformity to it. Though an early interpretation, which was common for communities around bodies of water, was that catfish were able to converse with humans or even transform into humans to transmit messages. These messages generally were warning people, specifically fishermen, to stop killing their kind. With stories like these, people in those areas thought the catfish were not ordinary fish, but actual rulers of the water realm. Moreover, it was said that if the humans disregarded these messages and actually killed some of their kind, the catfish would send some type of curse or disaster their way, like a flood. With stories like this emerging from these various communities, other early motifs rose, with Namazu being a type of good entity. For example, there was a story which originates from Saga Prefecture, near a shrine called Yorohime, about a large snake relentlessly killing people, generally at nighttime. One evening, a parent and child were in a boat, and suddenly this huge snake pursued them. In fear, they prayed to the heavens for help, and soon after, a huge catfish had appeared, devouring the humongous threat. After this, the people realized what the catfish did when they cut open its bloated belly to find the dead remains of the snake. After that, the local villagers, as well as the Yorohime shrine, made an oath not to eat Namazu, since it had saved their community. Now, transitioning from this, another story had arisen around the same time period. According to the legend, Namazu reside at the bottom of water, and from time to time, these Namazu would swim to the top. When this happened, people thought these fish were predicting some type of upheaval which would surely happen in the near future. This was a common idea during the medieval periods of Japan. So by the late Muromachi period, Namazu were completely associated with unrest and disasters, but they weren't completely associated with earthquakes. But around the 15th century, a story which surfaced around Lake Biwa in the Kansai region of Japan called Chikubushima-engi. Apparently, it tells a tale of a small island within this large lake, explaining the creation of it. Apparently, the island is floating on the water and is not connected to the earth, kinda resembling that of the Japanese creation myth. But the important part of this is that there happens to be a large Namazu residing directly under the island. And I'll explain soon enough, but this story is likely influenced by a Chinese theory about an ocean-dwelling dragon under the earth, essentially supporting it. Though, since this was a freshwater setting, this creature happened to be a Namazu in the Japanese tale. And to be honest, in various pre-modern texts, dragons and Namazu were a bit interchangeable in Japan. As we transition into the mid-18th century Edo period, there were numerous ideas which associated earthquakes specifically with our Namazu friend, especially among Edoites, which are the people from the city of Edo, which is now Tokyo, and other city dwellers. As many of you know, Japan experiences earthquakes quite frequently because of its geography. But during this time, there were plenty of theories trying to explain this phenomena of earthquakes. The most prominent, which originated from China, explains that a dragon lived under the earth, and when it moved around, it caused earthquakes. This was the main theory in Japan during the 17th century, but as they transitioned into the 18th century, this dragon was replaced by the catfish. Now that we have this laid down, let's delve into the core myth of the Namazu in Japanese folklore. There happens to be an important shrine called Kashima Jinja, which is at the center of this entire lore. Apparently, there happens to be a large boulder on the grounds, most of it underground, which is called the Kaname-ishi. It roughly translates to as a keystone or a foundation stone, but it is basically a boulder. Apparently, this keystone is what holds the entire world together. Plus, The Kaname-ishi is significant in Shinto as it is the entrance as well as an exit for various heavenly beings, but the stone is also there to keep many of the malevolent beings in check, one of these being earthquakes. A main purpose of it was to pin down the forehead of the great Namazu, which resided under the earth. As I explained earlier, it was the movement of the Namazu which caused earthquakes, but the stone was there to stop it from moving. However, alone, the stone can't keep this creature still. A significant deity called Takemikazuchi no O-Kami, also called Kashima Daimyojin, which is the Shinto deity of thunder, swords, and martial arts, is the one who restrains the giant Namazu with the boulder, and even sometimes with his own sword. But whenever Takemikazuchi dozes off, gets distracted, or is visiting a conference with other heavenly deities at Izumo, that's when the Namazu gets free and causes havoc with its earthquakes. One thing to point out though, is when Takemikazuchi leaves for the meeting, apparently the god Ebisu takes his place, but is generally incompetent and also dozes off on the job. Otherwise, whenever Takemikazuchi loses control of the situation, he attempts to regain control immediately, attempting to cease the disastrous event. This was the theory of many Japanese of the time, but the image of Namazu became more important to the societies of Japan, especially those residing in large cities like Edo. Whenever a big earthquake occurred, this followed with mass fires and complete destruction. Many artists painted these prints with Takemikazuchi stopping Namazu as talismans for protection. And some even had rich people defecating gold coins. Wait a minute, what? So, to explain these type of Ukiyo-e, generally called Namazu-e when depicting catfish during this time period, the wealthy business owners were known to hoard large sums of money and would also gouge the common people with high prices. When this happened, there was a limit of currency flowing in the community, and the majority of people were fed up with this behavior. It was also a thought from Neo-Confucius ideas of the 19th century that when there was no circulation of money, unrest and problems would arise. And when issues like this happened, there needed to be a major event to clear up the system, to make it healthy again. Well, after earthquakes, there happened to be countless destroyed buildings within urban communities, thus forcing the rich owners to pay skilled and unskilled workers alike to repair the city, thus recirculating the money back into the economy. So this was beneficial for many people, but obviously not everyone. And Namazu-e pictures during the time, especially in the 1850s after the Ansei earthquake, shows this. You have an abundance of pictures showing the outcome, from people who benefited to those that didn't. There were also pictures of personified catfish people who were helping the citizens recover after the earthquake. These Namazu pictures were more than just talismans, but also political pictures showing the civil unrest of the time. People were fed up with the Tokugawa government in the 19th century due to their policies and the acts of the elite. Moreover, it also didn't help that plenty of earthquakes occurred during this time. Hell, there was even a major famine that happened in the 1830s. With signs like this, people were getting ready for change, and a way to express this idea was through the medium of Namazu-e. The Namazu was not only considered bad, but also something good, something that needed to happen, literally to shake up the problems of the time period, so that it could cleanse the system essentially. It was also a way to express thoughts and ideas which the Tokugawa government disagreed with, which was one of the reasons why they tried censoring it. This of course is much more complex, and would take additional time to explain in full detail, but I'm sure you understand the point. Soon after this, the Tokugawa government collapsed, and the imperial family regained control of the country after centuries of being powerless, leading to the Meiji period. And the Namazu lived on as a symbol, generally mocking the names of politicians, as well as Meiji-era politics in general. In contemporary culture, Namazu are used as mascots for earthquake preparedness activities and the things of the sort. That was the long history of Whiscash's influences, and from all the points I made during this, you can see how Whiscash got its Pokedex entries. Moreover, also why it's a water and ground typing. Now, there's so much more to the Namazu myth that I could drone on for 15 more minutes, but I don't want to make this video too long, so I hope this summary opens your eyes to such a unique and awesome Pokemon. If you want to learn more about the Namazu, I have a couple of my sources linked in the description below, so be sure to check them out if you're interested. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video overall, be sure to support by giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and please leave a comment. With that being said, I'll catch you guys on the flip side.